Okay, so now we've got our box all prepared, and we're going to make our shelves. So we had decided that our shelves needed to be 8.5 inches by 3.5 inches. So what I did was I took my foam core, marked over 8.5 inches, and then 3.5 inches all along the side. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut off my 8.5 inch piece, and I will just line that up. Make sure that I'm totally on my cutting mat so I don't cut my table. Okay, now we're just going to cut. With the foam core, cut through the paper first. Whoa, went right offline. And then make a few more cuts. To get all the way through. Not quite that. There we go. Okay. The more that you try to get all at one time, the more that the foam core will kind of bubble up like this. It'll rip with your knife. So if you make just a few cuts, if you just keep making cuts, it's a lot smoother if you make more than one cut. And then what we're going to do, this is our 3.5 inch. I've already marked this all along here. And we're just going to cut these shelves 3.5 inches for each one. Paper. And we needed 6 shelves, or 6, I should say we need 6 this size. 1 for the bottom, 1 for the top, and 1 between each of the 5 pieces, little boxes. And I will wind up having one little leftover piece of scrap. And don't ever throw those away because you never know what you can use them for. I find that I go digging in my scrap box quite often to get a piece for something or another. There we go. And one last one. And then we'll have all of our shelves. There we go. And we have this one little piece left, so let's put that over there. Okay, now we're going to have one at the bottom. And one at the top. And then there will be one between each of the boxes. Okay, now, what we're going to do now is we need something. So it's going to go approximately right here, let's say. We need something to hold these shelves apart. So what we're going to do is we are going to cut a piece of foam core that will go down, across the back, and come back up to the front. And so that this shelf will sit on that on 3 sides. I've done my measurements. Now we already know that this box is 3.5 inches deep and 8.5 inches across, because remember and 3.5 inches tall. What we need to do is we have to remember that when you fold a piece of foam core, what happens is you wind up with this 1/4 of an inch here that you have to account for when you do your measuring. So what I'm saying there is this is 3.5 inches, and remember our box is 3.5 inches tall. So take this, let's fold it all the way in half so that we just see 3.5 inches. And if we put that on the board, or on the box, that lines up pretty much perfectly right there with the side. But what's going to happen is we are going to take this, we're going to have the side, we're going to fold it and go across the back and then fold it and come up the other side. When you fold it, you have to account for this 1/4 inch. Remember that 3.5 inches that just fit perfectly? Now that we've got it folded like this and put it in there like that, so you've got that 1/4 inch right there. And now if you look at the side of the box, see, it's sticking out. So what we need to do is we need to, instead of 3.5 deep, it's only going to be, we subtract that 1/4, 3.25 inches deep on each side. So we have 3.25 plus 3.25. The back is 8.5 inches across, but remember that we have this 1/4 inch, and we have it here, and then we'll also have it over here. So we need to take off a 1/2 inch across the back. So we've got 3.25 and 3.25 and 8 across the back. So 8 plus 3.25 and 3.25 is 14.5. And that is how big that our supports are going to be. They're going to be 14.5 inches long. So what we're going to do, and we're going to need, we have 5 boxes, so we're going to need a support between, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We needed 6 shelves because we put one on the top and the bottom, but we need 1, 2, 3, we need 5 dividers, 14.5 inches long. And how wide is our box? How tall do we want them? How big do we want our space? It's about 1.5 inches. Okay, so now we don't want it quite that tight, so we're going to go 1 3/4 inches. And that's how tall our shelf will be. So we need it to be 14.5 by 1 3/4 inches. And I think what we will do, I want to see how much I have left here. I have 24. I have 27.5 inches. That's not enough to make 2 that way, so I'm going to go this way. Okay, so we decided that that's going to be 1.5 inches, 1 3/4 inches. 1 3/4 inches. Because this is a square, I'm just going to line it up on my edge, line it up with that mark. And we're going to cut this at 1 3/4 inches. Remember, cut through the paper, and then make a few more cuts. And I really should sharpen my knife blade, or get a new knife blade, because this one's getting a little bit dull. Okay, there we go. 1 3/4 by 14.5. Trying to get this in frame here. 14.5. 14.5. Just make a quick cut there. Okay, that's going to be one support, 14.5 long by 1 3/4 inches wide. And we have to remember that we need to make a cut. What we're going to do is at 3, at 3 1/4, because we want it, remember we added it to be 3 1/4, at 3 1/4 we are going to make a cut. And on the other end, at 3 1/4, we're going to make another cut. Now this cut, we are only going to cut through the paper. We're not going to cut through the whole thing. So we're going to put this on here and just cut through the paper. Come down here and just cut through the paper. Okay, now where you made that cut through the paper, just give it a snap. And give it a snap. We just want it to have like a hinge on it. Now hopefully, if I measured this right, this will fit in the box. This is where I always make my biggest mistake. Okay. And it does fit. Now, it was a little bit tight right there because of the way that we measured. This box is 8.5 at this end, and it's only 8.25 here, so I'm a touch tight, but I'm going to leave it that way because I just like to make all of my shelves the same. Now, when we put that shelf in there, see how we've got this? We've got it here, and here, and here. So when we put that shelf on there, get that one out of the way, we slide it down on top of there. That is really, really, really sturdy because it is supported on both sides and along the back. And so that's why I make my boxes this way. I have seen where people have just made a couple sides and then they've glued these. They've just made a shelf. The shelf would be only as wide as this, and they would glue it inside here. I tried that a couple of times and I couldn't really get that to work. I couldn't get the glue to stay, and the one that I did get the glue to stay on didn't last very long before that shelf fell down. So that is why, and that's, I always put my support on the bottom, and I always have a support at the top, and, you know, just make sure that everything is good and tight. The reason that I put it in here, you could just try and build this like this, but this box helps keep it extra sturdy. This is strong. This gives you a lot of strength. This foam core, especially on the edges where it's standing up straight, there's a lot of strength there. So it will hold just about anything. I have one that I have a bowl of like the little glass rocks in, and that will set on one of these shelves, and it holds it. So, so now we're going to just keep cutting. We need 4 more of these dividers, and they are 14.5 by 1 3/4. So we'll see how many of these I can get done before Grandpa calls this morning. So we're going to measure this 1 3/4. Put the square on there. And if you don't have a square, you can just, you know, use a metal ruler and make your marks and line it up. I love my square because I can just line it up against the square edge of the foam core, and I don't have to put a bunch of marks. That's the only difference. Okay, so that's enough for one. Put another mark, 1 3/4. And if you cut these wrong, save it for the next box. It may not fit this box, but it very possibly could fit your next one. So don't throw them away. Foam core is not super cheap. It's not super expensive either, though, for what you're getting. There's 2 more. Ezekiel James. He tends to drink too much water and then he gets a bellyache. So you got to slow him down a little bit. Okay, that's 1 3/4. And I need just 1 more. And this is probably boring as boring can be. I'll get that last one in a minute. Okay, now the whole thing needs to be 14.5 inches long. 1.5. If you're not using a square, you should always have 2 marks so that when you put your ruler on there and you think it looks straight, if you only put 1 mark, it may not be straight. So okay, and then we have to come in 3 1/4, 3 1/4, oops, did that wrong. 3 1/4, 3 1/4, 3 1/4, 3 1/4. Now the only thing is, make sure that when you make these cuts, that you make them on the same side. Just cut through the paper, remember, for this one. If you do cut all the way through, you can just set it in there, but it's nicer to have it all attached. Give it a snap. Now we've got our neck support. Put that in there. Put the neck shelf on top. And just continue like that. So I have before, when I was cutting these, flipped it over and cut one of these where you just slice through the paper on one side of the poster board and one on the other. I need to cut this first. I need this to be 14 1/2. 14 1/2. 14 1/2. That doesn't seem right. I'm not doing something right. Let me look at this again. 14 1/2. Oh yes, I'm going from the wrong end of the ruler. I'm looking from, there we go. 14 1/2 would be over here. So see, it's easy enough to make a mistake. And I've definitely made enough in my time. 14 1/2, we're going to cut that off. Alright. Now come in 3 1/4. And 3 1/4. 3 1/4. Cut just through the paper. Give it a snap. Slide it into your box. And slide in the next shelf. And there we go. There's our third shelf. Just a couple more to go. So I don't know if you're going to want to watch the rest of this, but while I've got it on, I'll just continue to try and get it done. And if you have any questions on this, our length is 14 1/2. If you have any questions, just leave a comment and I will answer any questions that you have. But this is just, it really is an easy way to do this. You can adjust it to any size. I have made some that hold little round pill holders and put little round holes in the bottom. But still all the supports are all the same way. And at the very end of this video, I will show the others that I have made, the different types of storages that I have made with exactly this same. See, we need 3 1/4. with exactly this same setup. The basic thing is to make sure that you have your shelves and that you have these supports holding up those shelves, and you will have a really strong box. So I really do hope that you all get some inspiration out of this. I hope that it helps some of you. It's really not, you know, you've got recycled box. You know, the foam core, I pay $1 a sheet for it when I get it on sale. I always try and pick up like 3 or 4 when I get them on sale, because I always tend to find some sort of little thing like these that I want to make a storage box for, and so I like to have it on hand. Now, remember that I said that we were going to make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and what's going to happen is we are going to have a little bit extra, and it's just going to be this little bit. So it's too bad it couldn't be more, but it's not. So we have to cut one more support. And those supports were 1 3/4 inches. I will put this support in here, and then we'll decide what we're going to do with the top when I come back. So that's Grandpa, or Papa as you all know him. So I have to go for a few minutes, and I'll be back to finish the box. Thank you very much for watching. See you in just a bit.